And a CNBC exclusive is John Thompson, chairman of Microsoft, also now a venture partner at Lightspeed Ventures. John, great to have you on with us. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be with you.
So when you look at this escalating trade tension with China and the possibility that it could cause questions about the security viability of technology coming out of both nations, what do you think is the ideal end game to this?
Well, ideally, I think we do need to figure out how to balance the trade between the two countries. There's no question about that. However, when you think about the tariffs that have just been implemented, they will be carried on the backs of U.S. citizens, those of us who buy and sell things every day. And that seems to be a bit odd to me, particularly when you compare that to what's happened to salaries for the average U.S. worker. So U.S. workers will carry the cost of this trade war that's going on, and yet we haven't seen them do anything exponentially to grow the salaries of the U.S. population. That's not a good thing. Bad combination.
Yeah, want to talk to you about Microsoft as well. You have been chairman there through one of the most interesting periods in its history. I mean, it's hard to believe, but just a few years ago, activist investors were prodding at Microsoft, wondering what was going to change strategy-wise. You got Satya Nadella in the CEO seat, which surprised a lot of people, and his performance has also surprised a lot of people. Tell me, from the board perspective, from your seat, what did Microsoft get right, and what surprised you, perhaps, that you didn't see coming over how the company has changed over the past 4 or so years?
Well, that's a great question. I think Satya has done an amazing job. I don't think any of us would have forecasted the recovery or the rebound of the company to the level that it has rebounded back in 2000, let's say, 12 or 13. However, if you were to look at what Satya has said, he said, look, the marketplace is shifting to the cloud, and we have to make cloud first a reality for Microsoft. And being in the cloud is not just about being about Windows, it's about being about the platforms that many, many users currently want to take advantage of, Linux and others as well. And so this shift was an important shift. And quite frankly, the fact that we had such a strong on-prem presence allowed us to help customers migrate to the cloud in a very meaningful way. So I think Satya has done a great job, and I think the company is in much, much better shape. The one thing that I think is truly amazing in this transformation has been the cultural shift that has occurred within Microsoft. There's much more camaraderie, much more openness with customers and partners, and that sentiment, I think, has changed the way the market perceives Microsoft and has helped to underpin the growth of the company over the last few years.
John, tell me, what do you think is the most important driving theme in technology right now? You're in a unique position, both the chairman of Microsoft, one of the biggest, most powerful, profitable technology companies, but also as a venture investor, looking for trends, the next big thing that's going to disrupt big companies. Is it Internet of Things? Is it artificial intelligence? Is there another way of articulating the disruptive force that you see coming that's most important?
Well, quite frankly, one of the reasons I joined Lightspeed was to have an opportunity to monitor this inevitable change that's going to occur in our industry. And right now, one of the big technology platforms or initiatives is all around AI and machine learning, and applying that technology to existing application platforms that allows us to improve productivity quite substantially. And while many people talk about the impact that it could potentially have on jobs, the reality is technology has had a significant impact on jobs around the world for the last 25 to 30 years. And so we will have to adjust to this. But AI and machine learning will become an important element of every technology platform over the course of the next 10 to 20 years, not unlike the web did 20 years ago.
John, Morgan Brennan here. You just mentioned jobs. I wanted to get your thought on another governmental policy. Microsoft President Brad Smith was on CNBC a short while ago, mentioned that the company could move some jobs abroad because of U.S. immigration policies. How could that play out? What would that look like?
Well, I'm not sure. I didn't hear Brad's interview, but by the same token, I think anytime there is a trade war, anytime there are restrictions that occur country by country, it puts a U.S. company at risk as it tries to operate abroad. We have just announced a restructuring of our European business, but that's more about Microsoft as opposed to the regulatory environment that's going on around the world. I think we're going to have to be careful and monitor this over the course of the next, pick it, 6 to 12 months, because quite frankly, growth in our business is about global growth, not just about growth here in the U.S.
John, it's interesting. In recent weeks, there was a push for Microsoft to cut off contracts with ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, over the political stuff going on, lots of disagreements over how to handle immigration and such. It seems to me like there was a time when if you were selling software, a customer bought the package, that was the end of the transaction. They went and installed it. They moved on. Now in the cloud era, when you're providing a service, it seems like you've got more of a continuing hand in what the customer is doing with that software. It seems like a board level issue. How do you balance the company's values against what a customer might be doing with your software that perhaps doesn't align with those values? Do you have to treat it differently than you did in the past, or is it just a matter of explaining the relationship differently?
Well, I think this has been both an emotional issue for many people as well as a pragmatic issue that has to be dealt with. At the end of the day, we are a country that has to make sure that we're executing well around the world. And if we don't do that, then we don't grow as a country. My sense on ICE is that many of the issues there relate to the immigration debate that's going on day in and day out. And at the end of the story, we have to make sure that we do the right thing to balance between growing the economy and, quite frankly, accommodating workers that need more work.
But from Microsoft's perspective, as a provider of technology, not just to the U.S. government, but to governments around the world, to what degree should Microsoft be held responsible or feel responsible for the policies that governments execute using that software?
Well, at the end of the day, we offer an open platform, and that platform that runs on the cloud service for Microsoft is in fact controlled by Microsoft. The on-prem presence of software we cannot control. So you should expect that the cloud platform from Microsoft will conform to a set of regulatory policies and standards that are acceptable around the world. That's been the nature of Microsoft's business for many, many, many years. And I would expect that as this cloud revolution evolves, we will show the world that we are a straight down the middle kind of company and execute in that vein.
John, I'd also love to get your take on the state of security in technology. Of course, you were the CEO of Symantec for quite a while. We find ourselves in this environment where you can no longer count on just having a barrier around the perimeter or on the outside and keeping the bad guys out. You have to be able to track what's happening inside a corporation, inside the firewall, and figure out where bad actors might have already infiltrated. What is the next trend in that arena technologically that we ought to be paying attention to? And how do you distinguish between a security company that really has a sustainable advantage and one that's just chasing the flavor of the month?
Yeah, good question. Well, security has been one of the top venture investment areas for the last 5 or 6 years. I've actually looked at quite a few companies since I joined Lightspeed. I think the simple answer is the security problem is going to continue to challenge us. But when you think about the application of AI and machine learning and a number of other technologies like data graphs to the security technology platform, all of a sudden you can come up with new solutions in security that will make customers more secure tomorrow than they are today. Candidly, I've seen about 4 or 5 interesting young technology companies in the security space over the last 2 or 3 weeks. And all of them are thinking differently about security rather than it being an endpoint or a firewall or some other component. They're thinking much more holistically and how they can orchestrate insights across the various products that most large enterprises have. If you were to look at a large enterprise customer, no, I won't. Some of them are in stealth mode. But one in particular called Netscope is one that I think everyone ought to take a look at. And I'm not promoting Lightspeed here, but the company is doing exceptionally well.
All right, John Thompson, chairman at Microsoft, venture partner at Lightspeed, former Symantec CEO. We covered a lot of ground. I appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks.
Hey there, thanks for checking out CNBC on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe to stay up to date on all of the day's biggest stories. You can also click on any of the videos around me to watch the latest from CNBC. Thanks for watching.